There is a very high probability that at this point in time, the National Association of Realtors and really the entire real estate industry as we know it could be on its deathbed, because last year in October, there was a big lawsuit that the National Association of Realtors ended up losing. They basically got hit with a $40 billion fine that, as far as I know, hasn't really been paid yet. And this is a big problem because now they're facing even further lawsuits. And some of the real estate companies that were charged in this lawsuit actually were smart and decided to settle outside of court. Like, for example, you had Corcoran, Coldwell Banker, and Century 21 all decide to settle outside of court just days before the trial actually began. And they only had to pay about $140 million in combined fees. So they basically got away easy with this, and that was probably the smart move in retrospect, because now the National Association of Realtors is being hit with more and more lawsuits to the point where it can probably bankrupt the entire association and is going to end things as we know it. Already at different brokerages across the country, you have a lot of real estate agents renouncing their National Association of Realtors affiliation because they don't want to be associated with it anymore. And I can't blame them, guys. Like, I would get rid of mine too. If I could still have MLS access, I think that's basically the number one thing that holds back most people from doing this. But if I could have MLS access without being a member of the National Association of Realtors, I would do it right now, because there's literally no benefit, as far as I'm concerned, for being a member of the National Association of Realtors. And that's going to be part of their downfall here, which we'll talk about later. But we know that the real estate market in general is in the toilet right now, and the membership for the NAR actually proves this, because they've been losing members for the past 3 months straight, and they're projecting to lose about 8% more of its members throughout 2024 at this rate. And of course, they're blaming it on the slow housing market, which does have something to do with it. But also, it's because more and more agents don't want to be a part of the National Association of Realtors anymore. In fact, one of the companies that announced that they were going to be leaving the National Association of Realtors is Redfin. So if you're a Redfin agent out there, make a comment down below and let us all know how you're accessing MLS data with still being a Redfin agent and not being a member of the National Association of Realtors. But it turns out I'm not alone in my view, guys, because about 70% of real estate agents that were surveyed in the middle of October said that they would leave the National Association of Realtors if they could view the listing databases and be able to give tours of homes for sale. At the end of the day, all agents want to be able to do is have access to the listings that are for sale and be able to show them to their clients and make the sale. You know, they could care less about being a member of the National Association of Realtors. In fact, there's one real estate broker up in Seattle. He is the owner of his own branch of Coldwell Bankers called Coldwell Banker Danforth, and he says that he surveyed his 300 agents, and about 2/3 of them said that their membership in the national and local realtor associations provided little to no value. And I agree, guys. All we all really care about, I mean, for me, for example, I get this huge platform to use of all these different services that the Miami Association of Realtors offers for us. I use like 2 or 3 of them. That's it. I use the tax roll service to look up property information here on who owns it, when it was last purchased, and how much people are paying in property taxes, if they're delinquent, things like that. I use the MLS service, and I use a program to fill out contracts, or at least I did when I was still a practicing agent. So now I don't even use that anymore, but I still continue to pay for it just so I have access to all this stuff for you guys when I make these videos. Especially now that over the past few months, Redfin and Zillow have been hiding a lot of the real estate data when it comes to previous sales and previous listing prices and price cuts. I see this all the time when I try to look for things on Zillow and Redfin and show it in my videos when we see one of these houses for sale. A lot of times the full history is no longer disclosed. So the only way to get that is through the actual MLS itself, because it has a record of all the listings for that property, and you can see it directly through the tax roll. And the tax roll is public information, but we have a special program with the Realtor Association that gives us basically a much easier access to the info in a more streamlined and user-friendly way, I guess you could say. But anyways, this guy that owns his own branch of Coldwell Banker, Danforth, after surveying all of his agents, he decided he was going to drop membership with the National Association of Realtors, and a few of his agents left over the decision, but he would have had even more agents leave if he would have decided to stay. So either way, you'd be losing people. And this is why, guys, because look at this. He goes, "I truly believe the National Association of Realtors needs to earn every agent's membership fees one by one, and if they did, it would be a much better organization, but they don't. You know, it's just like a mafia at this point. They just collect fees from people every year and don't really give anything in return, you know? But of course, all these lawsuits are going back to the fact that a lot of home sellers believe that they're overpaying in commissions, and that's why they're suing, because they don't feel like they should have to pay these high commissions anymore, particularly when it comes to paying the buyer's agent of the property. The way the current system works is you'll have a seller's agent sign a listing agreement with a home seller, somebody that wants to sell one of these houses here, and say, hey, the commission is 6% or sometimes 5%, whatever they negotiate, and half of that commission is going to go towards paying the buyer's agent, if there is a buyer's agent. And if there isn't one, then I get the entire pie. That's how it works. That's how it's worked since I've been in business and way before that. But the people who are against this, that are suing, are saying that this system keeps commissions high by preventing buyers from negotiating fees with their own agents and allowing buyers' agents to steer clients away from homes that offer lower commissions. But the Realtor Association argues that the commission structure helps first-time buyers who can't afford to pay an agent out of pocket. And honestly, I can see both points of view, because a seller hires a real estate agent to sell your house. They're hiring you to do a job, not somebody else, right? So their thinking is, why do I have to pay somebody else? And if you're a buyer looking to use an agent, the seller thinks, well, you should be paying them. You know, you're the one using them, not me, so why should I have to pay? That all makes sense. I agree with that mindset. But like the Realtor Association argues here, if that's the way we did things, then most buyers probably wouldn't be able to have a real estate agent because they wouldn't be able to afford them. They wouldn't be able to afford to hire somebody to help them. There's also a big fallacy about this whole current commission setup, that because the seller has to pay both the buyer's and the seller's agent a commission, that it artificially keeps home prices too high. That's what a bunch of the advocates who are against the current structure are saying. And whether or not you believe the commissions are high is kind of irrelevant, guys, because the reality is, even if they changed all this tomorrow and said, you know what, sellers no longer have to pay any more buyer's agents commissions at all, that's going to be done. How many people do you think are going to be willing to take less for their house now? Raise your hand, because it's going to be zero. That's how many. You know, you think somebody who wants to sell this house here, now all of a sudden that they have to pay their realtor only half of what it was before, that magically they're going to lower the price of their home by that much? Fat chance. It ain't going to happen, because they're still going to want the same amount of money for the comps that just sold right down the street a couple of months ago, even though those comps were sold under the old commission structure. You know what I'm saying? Real estate works off of comparable sales. That's what comps stands for. And nobody's going to voluntarily take a hit on the value of their house just because they don't have to pay their realtor as much. They're just going to pocket the difference. So people who think that changing the commission structure is somehow magically going to make real estate cheaper, they're completely delusional, guys. They're dreaming. It's not going to happen. I mean, all you got to do is put yourself in a seller's shoes. If you owned a house and you had to pay the real estate agent less, would that change how much money you would want to get for your house? No, right? You would still want to get the fair market value for it. But But the reason I said earlier that this could be death of the NAR and the real estate industry as we know it is because that string of lawsuits that happened back in October was just the beginning. In fact, there's a new set of lawsuits. It's a class action lawsuit that's based out of Chicago. And the judge basically says that the National Association of Realtors and Keller Williams and RE/MAX and others violated U.S. antitrust law by pushing up the cost of homes for sale across the country. This is kind of similar to the Donald Trump case with the real estate valuations, just like all these big real estate bigwigs have been saying, which is true, by the way, that everybody does this. Everybody claims that the value of their properties are as high as possible when they're trying to get them reappraised and trying to get more money out of them. So it's not like Donald Trump did anything out of the ordinary for that. And I'm not defending him, I'm just saying that's the reality. That this is something that all of the big real estate developers do. So if they're gonna punish one for it, then they should punish all of them for doing the same thing, right? And the same goes for real estate. So how do you just say that this applies to a few companies and the NAR? Really, it applies to every single real estate company that exists, right? Because they all do the same thing. They all have this same commission structure for the most part, except for brokerages that, do the flat fee MLS thing. So at this point, the problem is it might not even matter if the National Association of Realtors is right in their stance and trying to defend the commission structure the way it is or not, because they might just be buried in these lawsuits, and just the legal fees alone to defend all of this and the possible damages that get awarded against them could be enough to bankrupt the entire association. That's where it seems like it's headed. And then if, say, for example, that happens, and then there's no more National Association of Realtors, right? All local brokerages and real estate agents are going to be operating under whatever commission structure that they deem to be fair for themselves, or whatever they think they can get away with. So what this is going to do in the end, if these guys end up failing, is there's going to be no uniformity whatsoever to how real estate fees are earned and collected. Brokers and different companies are going to come up with their own fee structure and different ways of getting paid as they please. So whether or not that's a good thing, I don't know. I think it's going to be more chaotic than anything else. There's something to be said for having a uniform way that the system works, so you can expect it to work the same way here in Florida as it does up in Massachusetts, or it does in Illinois, or it does in Colorado. But instead, it could be different everywhere if this ends up happening. And then as a buyer or a seller, you will really have no idea what to expect depending on which real estate company you hire, really. And then the other problem is you won't even know if whatever they're proposing is fair or not without vetting several different real estate companies to see what their commission and fee structure is. So consumers might get what they ask for with this. They want to sue, they want to shut these guys down, but in the end, what they're probably going to end up getting is chaos at a higher magnitude when it comes to fees for buying and selling real estate. And there's yet another lawsuit out of Massachusetts with the same thing, guys. So as you can see, the trend here is these lawsuits are starting to pile up, and they're not going to be able to continue defending all these cases and pay for all of this. Eventually something's going to break and they're just going to be done. So right now, this court case in Massachusetts, they're recommending that from now on, sellers stop making commission offers to buyers brokers at all moving forward. And they say that this would basically promote competition by empowering buyers to negotiate directly with their own brokers. So this is right back to what we were talking about earlier, that the problem is a lot of buyers don't have anything to negotiate. They can barely afford to buy homes at these prices. That's why you're seeing, mortgage applications at all-time lows right now, or at least 30-year lows. Buyers don't have anything extra to give to their real estate agents, so they're going to be basically forced to go it alone, which is going to cause them problems as well. They're going to be in a situation where they can easily be taken advantage of by the seller and the seller's agent because they have no idea what they're doing, and they might accept an offer that is less than favorable because of their inexperience. And so basically, if all of this goes through, guys, and they prevent sellers from paying buyers agents commissions moving forward through one of these court rulings, and that becomes the new standard, what it's really going to do is it's going to put a ton of real estate agents and brokerages out of business because they're not going to be collecting those additional commissions anymore. So they're probably going to go under, number one. But I think what it's also going to do is it's going to leave pretty much zero incentive for buyers agents to work with buyers moving forward unless you can get some kind of upfront payment from them. And that's like probably never going to happen. So look at it from the buyer's agent's perspective of why would you want to work with somebody for free? You wouldn't, right? Nobody's in business to make no money. And so I don't think there's going to be a way to do this unless they start building it into the financing, for example, just like when you get one of the renovation loans and they give you more money than you actually need to buy the house in order to renovate the house, and they start padding the commissions into some kind of loan in the future. I could see that potentially happening, but really then we're just right back where we started. At the end of the day, someone is going to be paying for that buyer's agent, whether it's the buyer, whether it's the seller. And the reality is the buyer has always paid. You know why? Because if they're saying that home prices are artificially inflated due to buyer's agents' commissions, well, guess who pays for the house? The buyer does, not the seller. The seller's selling the house. They're collecting the money. Even though the seller technically pays the commission, they're paying it from the funds that are given to them from the buyer and their lender. So the buyer has always paid the commission. So basically they want buyers now to pay the full price for the house. That still covers the seller's part of the commission, and they want you to now pay out of your pocket to pay your agent. So how many people are going to be on the board with that? Probably not very many. Honestly, guys, I don't really care what happens with this because I don't work for commission anymore. That's the beauty of YouTube. I don't have to worry about working for commission anymore. But this is definitely going to affect a lot of people in the industry, a lot more than they think, because this situation continues to snowball. But as the market goes in general right now, we actually saw a 10% increase in new listings year over year over the last few weeks, according to Redfin, which is actually a positive sign that inventory is coming back. But the reality is, when you look at inventory on a year over year basis, it's still down by 1.8% according to Redfin. So even though inventory, new listings are starting to pick up, it's still lower than it was a year ago. And you know, they put out these stories, guys, to try to convince people that now's a good time to go out and buy real estate, because now's always going to be a good time to go out and buy real estate if you ask a mortgage broker or a real estate agent, right? But the thing is, even though they're writing these stories talking about the new listings coming, it's not enough to get people back into the market. In fact, mortgage rates have been climbing over the past couple of weeks. It's already well over 7% again, and the mortgage applications continue to plummet, guys. Like, this is just not going to be fixed until home prices come down. I don't care what people say. You know, a lot of people like to complain that the rates are too high, and once that changes, it's going to magically fix the market. But it isn't, because the rates are never going to go back down to where they were a few years ago. Because even though you have the new listings up 10%, you have mortgage applications down 10% during the same time frame. What we really need is a prolonged period of this same dynamic happening, where the mortgage applications are down and the new listings continue to go up. And as that happens for a long enough period of time, that will lead us to a more balanced market where there's finally enough homes on the market for sale that can bring prices down some more. But apparently, according to a lot of Redfin agents right now, that a lot of sellers are open to buyer concessions again, because they need to, in order to basically help buyers get into the house, because these 7% rates and the prices are just too high. So they're saying about 90% of the time, buyers' offers are including some sort of concession right now, asking the seller to give them a large chunk of money towards closing costs, maybe a discount, maybe a mortgage rate buy down, things like that that will help them finalize the deal. And it's funny because it says that the most common concession that buyers are asking for, which is definitely guided by real estate agents, which actually makes me think that maybe they should get rid of buyers agents, is the most common concession is a mortgage rate buy down. Let's forget about the price. We're not going to try to offer them a lower price. We're going to get them to do a mortgage rate buy down. Once again, attacking the interest rates as if that's the problem rather than the actual home prices themselves. And you know, people rely on their real estate agents for advice on what to do and how to handle the deal. And a lot of agents are definitely steering buyers into doing that rather than making a lower priced offer, say 10% off or something like that significant to get a decent discount on the house. So if that's what a bunch of them are doing out there, then they all deserve to go out of business, guys. That's my standpoint on this. So don't think for a minute I'm sitting here defending buyers agents, especially if they are, continually pushing their buyers to buy homes they can't afford and thinking that the best deal that they can get them is a concession on the mortgage rate. This is not good. Honestly, you guys can do better than that. And one final thing I want to end with here, guys, is I've been talking a lot about how these insurance and property tax increases are pricing people out of their homes. And one of my viewers wrote me an email this week, and he says that he lives in Oregon and he's a baby boomer, he's retired, and he's lived in his home for many years and he hasn't seen any increases on any of these expenses that I keep talking about until now. In fact, he's just like me. He has a clean driving record, he's got an 820 plus credit score, so nothing wrong in that department, but his luck basically ran out because his auto insurance policy just went up a whopping 46.5%, and his homeowner's insurance policy just went up 21.5%. So those are two major increases right at the same time that people have to pay for when you're retired on a fixed income. So he said, Michael, I'll be able to handle it for this year, but what about next year and the year after that? That's what I'm worried about, because honestly, he says, if things keep going this direction, I'm gonna either need to self-insure or I'm gonna have to sell assets to keep from losing my home. That's where it's at right now, guys. And one of the biggest assets that people own is their home. But I think people will sell a lot of other things before selling the home because people need a place to live. But I wanted to bring this up because it's very sad and a lot of people think that it's not happening. And I talk a lot about how the baby boomers are eventually going to have to sell their homes because they need to downsize or they can't afford it. And this is a personal anecdote from one of my viewers saying that this is actually happening to them, that if things keep going in this direction, they're going to have to sell the house, guys. But the problem is, who's going to be there to buy it at these prices and rates and with a sky-high insurance bill? That's the thing. The younger generation would naturally be next in line to buy a home like that, but they can't afford it, guys. That's the reality. So what is the natural order of things from there? The prices will have to come down substantially in the future, especially when a lot more people like this are in this position. It's going to be the only way forward. It's going to be the only way that younger people can afford these homes is at much lower prices. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.